Hello and welcome to the TruGolf Academy. You've joined me, Jon Watts, today in my swing studio, and today's video is all going to be about the reverse pivot. So first we're going to talk about what a reverse pivot is, and then I'm going to give you some really simple exercises that you could just do at home or on the driving range to make sure that you're actually loading correctly into your trail side and getting well away from that reverse pivot that causes a lot of faults. So first of all, what is a reverse pivot? Well, it's really when we see on the backswing, instead of the pressure loading into our trail foot, we see too much pressure staying over that lead side. Often it's coupled with a real almost C shape here on our lead side. So it looks like our upper body is actually tilting towards the target. From that position, we're either going to get very steep, big divots, really deal off the golf club, or what tends to happen is our body will be trying to lean backwards to stop that happening. It's a bit like a pilot landing a plane. If the plane is coming too steep into the runway, at some stage your brain's going to kick into gear and you're going to try to level it out, stop that plane crashing into the ground. So from this position we tend to see someone leaning away from the target, either catching it heavy or thin from there. So we see all sorts of issues, including loss of speed and power. We wouldn't throw a golf ball, of course, or any ball or any movement this way to that way. We would load into our trail side before moving into our lead side, which is exactly what we're trying to do with the golf club in our hands. So that's what a reverse pivot is. I think it can be caused for a couple of reasons. So one part that I see is often players almost starting with the hips a little bit out of alignment, and I quite often see the hips almost bumped a little bit this way towards the target. When they're too much this way, what tends to happen is as we swing back, the hips want to move backwards, and as our lower body tries to slide to the right away from the target, for me as a right-handed golfer, my upper body will be leaning towards the target, and there you see this real reverse C shape here in my back. It puts a lot of pressure in here as well. So often I find when golfers are out of alignment with their hips, they're trying to get their hips to slide back and their upper body will be compensating. So what I do like to see with our hips is them actually just inside your feet. So I'd like to see your hips quite well stacked just on the inside edges of your shoes there. I don't want to see them too much this way or too much this way laterally. So I want your hips quite well aligned within your feet naturally, and that's going to allow us to turn correctly. When we do this correctly and when we get away from this reverse pivot, what we should see, instead of this reverse C-shaped position here, what we should see is almost a nice straight line up my lead leg, all the way up my hip and all the way up my side here. So it's in that position rather than that position. Okay, so there's a real difference. I'll just show it from a different camera angle as well. So instead of this shape here, we really want to turn away from the target, and you can see this nice straight line all the way up my lead leg, lead hip, and all the way up the side of my back here. Very different to swaying off the golf ball. I am turning or coiling correctly, loading pressure into my trail foot so I can start to turn more into my lead leg. Now I'm expecting some questions on then stack and tilt, having talked about this. It is absolutely true, there is a method, and there are some players who would stay a little bit more on their left side, on their lead leg. I think that's fine, but you would see them all on their left side. You wouldn't see their hips having gone away from the target and their upper body this way. So you'll see their pressure a little bit more onto their lead side, and they'll stay onto their lead side or even increase into there. That method for me, it does work as long as you're fantastically flexible, got very good rotational rates. So players who are a little bit more on their lead leg, it tends to work okay as long as they can really start to clear their body very, very well on the downswing into impact. For most of us, a simpler method would actually be applying pressure into our trail foot to move pressure into our lead leg, which is very different to a real weight shift here or a slide on and off the golf ball. So the second reason I quite often see this, as I said, first was not really getting the hips correctly over the feet here, and what tends to happen I find is when the hips are sliding away from the target, the upper body will be compensating. The second reason I see is just players trying to stay so centered that they find they're actually moving towards the target with everything here. And we quite often, and I like to see the trail leg straighten, absolutely, but quite often with that style of player, we'll see an extreme movement very, very quickly and a big gap here between our legs. Now, I've got no problem with this knee starting to straighten, this hip starting to turn, but it's more of a gradual movement, and perhaps it wouldn't be quite as extreme as we would see with that player who's hanging all over their lead side. So for that style of golfer, I really want to, again, get them doing some exercises where we're applying that pressure more towards our trail foot. So our body, our chest, should actually be extending slightly as we turn, but we don't want an overextension. So an overextension would be this movement, where again you can see I'm leaning towards the target, I've got this reverse C shape, and I've got my pressure on my lead leg. If I didn't extend my chest at all, it would look something like this. So that's no good, and that's no good. The chest is actually extending, but we're extending it to the right amount. Now, one of the best exercises, and you'll see this a lot from me, I really like it, very simple, is just placing a tee peg 2 feet past the ball. I'm sure you'll have seen me do this before if you've watched the channel. And what I want to do is coil correctly, keep my head over the ball, apply pressure into my trail foot, and try and get the end of the grip pointing down at that tee peg that was 2 feet past the golf ball. It's important to make sure this club is nice high across your shoulders as we do this. And I'm starting to coil correctly. Again, if I overextend, you'll see this is pointing actually pretty high up towards the camera. And if I didn't extend my chest at all, if I stayed down this way, of course, my shoulders, well, I can't really create much turn, and this is pointing very vertical, almost down nearer the golf ball. So there has to be some extension of our chest in the backswing, but we definitely don't want an overextension. Another really simple exercise I've got for you is just using a toss stick either into the ground, or if you're on a driving range, or you're just going to put it through the bucket. I'm going to show it from this angle, just a slightly wider camera. So you're going to push the cane through the bucket. You're going to start with your lead foot pretty close. Going to move a little bit. So there's just a slight gap, or you can even get right up. So this is right up your lead side. If we move this way, I'm poking myself in my back because my upper body is leaning towards the target. So what I want to see is that I turn behind the golf ball, apply pressure into my trail foot. You can still see I've got that gap, a nice straight line all the way up my lead side here as I coil backwards there, not there. Okay, so there's a real big difference. So just doing some cane exercises, you could even hit some shots doing that. I'm just going to go ahead and hit one to finish with. So after doing some of those exercises, either the tee peg 2 feet past the golf ball, coiling correctly, or using the toss stick, go ahead and just make some slow backswing positions. Wind up to the top here. I can feel the pressure into my trail foot. I could even lift this foot if I wanted to, my lead leg, so I know I haven't got still pressure on there. Of course, if I've gone this way, I can't really lift this foot because I've got all my pressure on there. So I should be able to coil correctly into my trail side and just lift this foot, or lift the heel slightly. So that's a good exercise, a good feeling for you. Let me go ahead and see if I can hit a nice one here. Just cutting a little bit away from the target. Not my best strike in the world. Let me see if I can hit one more. Okay. That feels I'm applying that pressure nicely into my trail foot, but I haven't moved off the golf ball to allow that. You can see my hips are quite well centered between my feet. So I'm in a good start position to go ahead and hit a better shot than that last one. There we go. That's on the money. That could be on the flag. Pretty close, landed pin high, just rolling to the back of the green there. but nice distance, good strike for a 6-iron. If you do struggle with early extension, if you do struggle with a reverse pivot, so we're moving this way, applying too much pressure onto our lead leg, I know those couple of exercises are really going to help you. Make sure you're applying the pressure correctly to this trail foot and getting this back angle that we really want to see here rather than this reverse C shape. If you did enjoy the content out of the video, make sure you give us a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the channel. There's all the other content Monday, Wednesday and Friday, and all our social media info should be coming along the bottom of the screen right now as well for you. Thanks guys, we'll see you soon.